South African and African creative realm has really come to its own over the past few decades, so much so that the whole world is looking to Africa for inspiration, answers and guidance. For this week's episode, we're coming to you from the iconic Constitution Hill in Johannesburg, where we explore the creative world of fashion, art and design. We speak to the visionaries and thought leaders that are at the forefront of African creativity. I'm your host, Ayanda Tabete, and this is Africa Modern. Coming up on the show this week, we're exploring Avant Garde streetwear with fashion designer Sipho Zwane.
Fashion design for me is more about self-expression.
Then we take a look at an age-old tradition of hat making with Simon and Mary.
We look back in the day, the height of your hat would define the stature of a person.
And to finish off, we're catching up with creatives by chatting to illustrator and pattern designer Zinhle Sithebe.
I draw inspiration from everyday life.
In this week's episode, we're exploring traditions old and new. As we move from the past into the present, we see a young crop of talented African creatives rise to the fore. First up, we'll look at avant-garde fashion and everyday wear with the fashion designer Sipho Zwane and how his work is influenced by the diversity of the denim material, as well as how his creativity is fueled by his surroundings.
Fashion design for me is more about self-expression. It could be how we live. It's thinking out of the box. It's broadening your horizons, you know, when you start looking at clothing, creativity, artistry in a whole. I use mainly denim because denim is like a canvas for me. It allows me to do anything I want to, anytime I want to. So it's not like other fabrics where you could find a fabric with prints and that's all you can work with. So denim is, you can manipulate it to whatever shape. It can take shape, size, whichever way you want it to be. I grew up in Joburg with my grandmother, so I've lived with her almost my whole life actually. So the whole thing of design started when I used to see her sew using her machine. I used to assist her with little things like getting the needle in, threading the needle, you know. Now it's this freaking thing, like I'm always doing it. But as a person, I've always been a person who's always been into sketching, probably. I've loved art. I never knew what it would lead to actually as time went, you know. And late in high school, I started actually tailoring my own stuff. You know, when your pants are like so baggy, when you get like those gray pants, I just take them and like make them to my size. They wouldn't come out the way I always wanted them to, but I just had that vision though that, no, this needs to happen this way. So I'd ask for assistant and all of that stuff. So I slowly started going into that whole thing. Then late high school, before I even finished high school, that's when I made my first garment. Then I went into retail after that. That in a way developed a sense of entrepreneurship, looking at clothing in a different sense that, oh, actually, I love sewing and working there. It's like, okay, now I'm starting to learn more about how the business side works. And things just went up from there. They just went up from there. And just after college, just after I graduated, I didn't even wait. I just was like, no, I'm opening a business without having an idea of sorts that what is that business going to do. So it was just like open the business and sell clothing. In my head, it was so easy, and it was like, I'm just gonna open a business and it's like, it's gonna be fine. And yeah, that's how it all came about. We're at Newtown Junction at Istoro. 3 months ago, we came up with this place. So the whole idea behind Istoro was to sort of create a distribution plan for local brands. So in the space, we have 4 brands here as well. So it was to kind of establish a new idea of retail, that we can still go into retail as designers, not take away your creativity, but just cut down so we can actually access a market of people wanting to buy everyday stuff. My creative process is quite technical actually. So everything starts from getting inspiration from like pictures and stuff. So what I do is I use a 3-step kind of creative process, which includes documenting textures or structure, and it's like an experiment type of part. So with textures, I could be probably roaming around Johannesburg with my camera, just taking pictures of like structures like buildings. It could be something as abstract as seeing a flower grow from like the bricks on the pavement. So I just document those kind of stuff. So when I design, I go back to those things and somehow implement what I've got from the field into now the sketching kind of process. So those structures, somehow those textures are going to be implemented into the clothing itself. As well, with the experimentation part, I also have like storylines. So I want to create some sort of a storyline out of the range that I'm doing. So it's quite senseless for me to actually create something and not have a story behind it. When there's a story behind it, I actually know it gives me direction where to go about with the collection. So one thing I've been looking at is like I've been caught up by how the yin and yang works. You know how the dark and light works? So I'm trying to infuse as well color, but have it in 2-tone palettes. That somehow for me entails like the dark and light of the career path itself, where I'm from, where I'm going. So it's kind of that story, and I'm still trying to tell more about it so it makes sense in my own context. I kind of see a person who's not bound to norms of society wearing my stuff. Someone who's actually looking at fashion in a global outlook, you know? You want to look unique, you want to look fresh. There's a lot of detailing in my brand. There's a lot of like abstract kind of feel, the way it looks like as well, you know? So it's looking at someone who's actually a fashionista, if I may say.
Sit right there, don't go anywhere, because after the break, we're learning the art of millinery and chatting to Dean Pozniak, who is the founder of Simon & Mary. You don't want to miss this. When a skill is passed down from generation to generation, you know that the craft is taken seriously. For Dean Pozniak, who is the founder of Simon & Mary, millinery, or the art of hat making, has been that skill. He explains how an age-old classic can still have a place in today's society. Let's check this out.
My name is Dean Pozniak. I'm also the 4th generation milliner in my family. We are hat makers. We've been making hats in South Africa since 1935. Simon & Mary was launched in 2014 as a homage to my grandparents, Simon and Mary, who started the business. My great-grandfather came over from Poland. He brought his hat factory to South Africa. He then handed the business over to my grandfather, Simon, and then my father, Julian, and my uncle, Robert, came into the business. And now I'm here as the 4th generation milliner. What drove me was just wanting to tell the story of my family, the heritage, the history, you know, and I think not only with the family, with my direct family, but with the people in the factory. There's a lot of history and a lot of heritage, and it's been pretty pleasing for myself to see this message get across in the public. Growing up with a father that was a milliner, works in the hat factory, it was always fascinating coming to the factory, but it's strange because I've always just had a fascination for hats. Naturally, it's always been like a weird sort of thing for me because it's what my family does. But also growing up, I never knew how we made money selling hats because I never realized how many people wore hats until I started working in the business. When I started working in the business, I saw the orders come in, I saw all the retailers that we supply, and that for me was the most mind-blowing part of it all. I really love working with hats. It's seen as a fashion item, but for me it's more than that. There's a lot of history behind hats. If you look back in the day, the height of your hat would define the stature of a person. Like I'm wearing a poor boy cap. It's called a poor boy cap because literally, like in those days, tall top hats would represent the highest of stature, and then like low stature would be a poor boy cap. So for me, continuing the family legacy is just something that I enjoy most. And then also just getting to crown people. It's something that we see, putting a hat on people's heads is the final piece of the outfit. You're crowning them, and it also makes the outfit sort of like stand out, and it's something I really enjoy. Even though we are an old school product, we've been able to inject that bit of new school in it, and I think that's where the two worlds have met, and I think that's what's given us a very unique product, made in South Africa, on old school machines. It is an old school product, but with myself, Jana and Chris, and all the people I've worked with, we've been able to kind of bring it up to the new generation. Hats have always been a traditional line in South Africa. If you look at all the old school photos, guys are all wearing hats in South Africa, and that's what drives it, and that's how we definitely want to keep it. This is the first phase of making a hat in our factory. After the dyeing process, the blocking machine over here, which is Swinky, who's been working with us for 41 years, he operates this machine. What it does is it stretches the brim to the length it needs to be and gives the crown the height it needs to be to go to the next phase. Swinky, let's show them an example. As you can see, the steam allows the felt to stretch and to mold like putty. And then just some air to cool it down. And as you can see, the machinery is probably from late 50s, early 60s. The hats come upstairs from the first blocking stage, like this. The point of the pressing stage is to get the shape of the crown. That's how we do it. Again, it all works with steam, water, and pressure. So this is now the sandbagging phase. This is where they shape the brim. This is after it's come through everywhere. It's got the ribbon, it's got all the finishes on it. And this is basically the final stage where we just shape the brim. Dan. Again, we use steam and pressure to shape the hats. What has been very popular for us has been our fez range, so we do now like to come out with new and different kinds of looking fezzes, and that would be a hat without the brim. It seems to be on trend, and it also seems to be quite an African look, I guess you can say. So the story of the fez is actually quite a funny one. We've had the fez blocks for many years. I made up a few samples in 2015. I put them on myself, looked in the mirror and laughed my head off and said, nope, this will never work, which is the first mistake you make. Then in 2016, I think Trevor was here, Trevor Stearman. He saw it in the corner of his eye in my office. He picked it up, put it on. I said, whoa, that looks beautiful. He looked at it, beautiful. He wore it out for a bit. then yeah, after seeing the reaction to all of his peers and all the people that, you know, when he had posted on Instagram, the way that they would react, we decided to launch it as a full range. We did it with Trevor. Trevor shot it, and no looking back since then. It's been a remarkable success, and it's become one of our top lines. Simon and Mary moving forward, we have worked with hemp in the past. We're going to continue working with hemp. We are always looking at the ethical routes, the sustainable routes, and yeah, just keep evolving, keep going with the times, and keep wearing hats, everybody.
Nothing beats a handmade classic. And how awesome is it that all the hats are made locally right here in South Africa? Well, it's time for a break, but don't go anywhere, because after this, we're speaking to illustrator and pattern designer Zinhle Sithebe. You don't want to miss this. Constitution Hill is a living museum that tells the story of South Africa's journey to democracy. The site is a former prison and military fort that bears testament to South Africa's turbulent past, and today is home to the country's constitutional court, which endorses the rights of all citizens. Constitution Hill is also a place of contrast, of injustice and justice, of oppression and liberation. The precinct is testament to the importance of preserving sites of atrocity for prosperity, and also to creating them so that they can serve the purposes of the present and serve to mold the future. It has now become an architectural icon, adding to Johannesburg city's skyline. Zinhle Sithebe is a young, award-winning talent that goes by the name Z Feels because she often translates what she's feeling into her illustrations. She's inspired by everyday life, people, objects, womanhood, as well as African culture. It's important to her to create content and illustrations of people that look like her, a strong African woman. Let's check her out.
Can you tell us who you are and what it is that you do? Hi, my name is Zinhle Sithebe. I go by the artist name Z Feels. I'm an illustrator and graphic artist. I've always known that I was a creative child. It's always been in me. So from a very young age, I've always known that it's been in my blood. I draw inspiration from everyday life. People, objects, flowers. I love flowers. Yeah, everyday life, you know. People don't realize how much beauty there is in just the outside and everything that you see every day. My style of illustrating is very hand-drawn, very bold, very colorful, very much a mixture of contemporary and Zulu aspects. Most of my illustration work is based on women as a whole. Not that I don't illustrate men, but it's majority of my content is based around women. Everything that Z does, she feels, which is why I call myself Z Feels, is because I don't create based off of trend. I create because I feel. I think it's a new way of how we look at Africa. It's, you know what? It's a shift. It's a shift of thinking in Africa and to the rest of the world. Definitely entering the Nando's Hot Young Designers competition. It brought about a lot of change, and I learned about myself within that journey, that I was able to do something that I was uncomfortable doing. And even though I didn't win, I learned a lot from it. I gained a lot of other opportunities that came with that competition. I'm currently working on a children's book that should be coming out in December. I'm in collaboration with this lovely author and writer, and I'm looking forward to starting that soon. And you can check me out on my social media. I still do share a lot of my illustration work and pattern design, just to get to know me a little better. Thank you for having me. I'm spreading loads and loads of light to you, and I hope to see you soon. Bye.
It's been fun taking you through this week's episode of Africa Modern. Join us next week as we continue to explore the creatives that call Africa home. Let's continue the conversation on social media using the hashtag Africa Modern. Until then, I'm your host, Ayanda Tabete, and this is Africa Modern.